Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode number 20 in the Craft Fair booth review series where I take a look at a real craft fair booth submitted by one of my subscribers, and I'm going to break this review down into 10 segments. I'll point out things that they're doing well and should continue to do, and then also identify some areas where there's room for improvement. Along the way, keep your craft fair booth in mind so that you can apply these tips in order to level up your booth. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just dive right in. Okay, and so for this episode, we're going to be reviewing Ashton's booth, and her business is Crescent Studios Company. She's based out in Indiana, so another new state checked off. Very cool. And her business is going to consist of many types of crochet crafts. Okay, so that's going to basically be a good portion of the booth is crocheted crafts, but she's also going to have keychains, stickers, and earrings. All right, so there's a few other items besides crochet. So Ashton is an Etsy seller. She's established on Etsy. She's been on there for a while. And the photos that we're going to look at are from her third ever craft fair. Okay, so her third time out. So that's a quick recap on what we're going to dive into. So let's go ahead and begin. Okay, here we go. So this is the first picture of the booth. We're looking at a 10 by 10 outdoor booth. And it's a pretty clean setup, especially for a third show. Good accessibility. We'll touch on that later. But yeah, overall, I'd say that we're doing pretty good here. So Ashton included 6 photos that we're going to be able to look at. So we basically have every view and every angle of the booth covered. So we'll be able to dive in some pretty good detail during this review. Now, the first thing that we're going to begin with is displays. So let's work our way from left to right. And the first thing that we see is this rack here. Okay, so it has 4 levels. All levels are being utilized, so that's good to see. That covers some verticality at the booth, because a lot of times with the booths, we kind of start from the table and work our way up. And it's nice just to see some lower levels being used. It's space that a lot of times you kind of forget about it. You know what I mean? When we talk about verticality with displays, we're normally focusing on how can we work our way up. But you also got to remember that there's space generally when you go down too. So always keep that in mind, vendors, that to go down and up with your displays. We're going to switch angles here to look at the left side of the booth. So here is an up-close look at the display that I just mentioned. So on this upper tier, she has hats, and then there's dish. I think these are like dish protectors. I can't quite see what the tag says. And then there's headbands. Looks like there's headbands. And then down here, I think these are a couple blankets. Okay, so kind of cool because this one rack is covering an assortment of items, and there's nice options. And I like that this display is placed at the outer edge of the booth because it offers variety. First of all, so there's a couple of different things for people to look at, and maybe people are seeking something different. So you give yourself better odds of attracting somebody's attention when it's not just one particular item being featured at the edge of the booth. Okay, so people walking by, basically you've given them 4 different opportunities to draw their interest, with this first display. So I like that. Very, very good. And then even on the side here, the way that you've utilized these right here, I think these are just kind of like over the shoulder bags for ladies. I like this a lot. You've got like these hooks on the side, and then you're able to hang these. So really this is kind of covering 5 different items. All right. And nice job. Just a big fan of this overall. We have a different angle for this table, so let's go ahead and move on to that photo. That'll cover that one a little bit better. And here we are. So this is the table behind that rack that we just covered. And this table, I would say, in my opinion, is not set up quite as good as the table on the right side of the booth from the shopper's perspective. We'll get into that kind of when we check out that right side. But to break this particular one down, I do like the division between the items. So I think that's good. So that, each item, I should say like each design of the crocheted crafts are kept separate. So they each have their own little home, and I like that a lot. The reason why I like this is because it's going to help to keep your booth nice and tidy and organized throughout the full duration of the event. So again, these nice little divisions and homes for each of these designs is great. What we would like to see here, though, is verticality in your displays. So everything is just laid down on the table. These guys back here, it almost feels like they're overlooked. Okay, so I think these are all Octopus back here. It just feels like, I don't want to say that they're an afterthought, but they definitely are. They're just pushed in the background, and they're not getting the same kind of attention that these are. So in the back here, this is where you would definitely want to see some kind of a riser to get these up a little bit so that, first of all, it makes it more interesting to the eye, just as a shopper to look at, but then also so that these are being featured just as prominently as whatever's in front of it is being featured. Same thing with these guys right here. It looks like they're propped up on a little bit of a box, but something a little bit even higher would be better just to really get them up over these signs and just offer a different eye level for the shoppers to look at. So I think this might be our best view of the grab bags. So you have mystery grab bags that are $10, and there's a $10 grab bag, and it looks like there's a $25 grab bag. And, obviously assorted items that the shopper doesn't know. This is a fun element, and actually something that I don't think we've covered very much in the booth review series so far is the mystery grab bags. And they're a lot of fun. It creates kind of like a whimsical, exciting purchase for the shopper. And on your end as a vendor, it can be really, really nice because if you have like some leftover stock where maybe you don't want to do a particular design anymore, let's just say the jellyfish, for example, and you have like 2 or 3 left over and you don't necessarily want to dedicate an entire section of your booth towards something that you're kind of phasing out. These are always a really nice option where they're still quality items. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but you don't have to dedicate like a chunk of your display space to them. So with a particular booth like this, where there's many, many designs of crocheted crafts, these are really, really nice to have for the vendor. So I think it's a win-win. I think it's exciting for the shopper to get a little something, and then it's also very, very handy for the vendor. Now let me hop back to this view for a second to look at these mystery bags. And I think, again, what we'd like to see here is some kind of height, okay? So some sort of riser where maybe they're staggered, maybe they're staggered by value. So there's like 3 different tiers for 3 different price points or however you want to do it. But, they're all on the same level. And, these teal colored bags here, they could be different, like they could be a different value, but they're being completely blocked, So again, the left side of the booth and the center, but mostly the left side of the booth is where you really, really need to get some verticality introduced. So let's cover the middle table now. And we got a pretty good view of that here. So we'll go to this angle. And this is a good angle because this is like a great shopper level, right? This picture was taken basically the way a shopper would see it as they're standing right in front of the table. Okay, so over here we have the Keychain spinning rack, and this is really nice. I like these. They offer a little bit of height on the table, so it gets the items up off the table, spinning and rotating so people can see all the items that are on here, and it does the trick, So the one thing that I would say as a suggestion or consideration is that the top part, there's a lot of duplicates, so we see these are all bees, right? And we see yellow, yellow, purple, purple, teal, teal, pink, pink, couple pinks over here, couple teals, couple more purples. So we see a lot of repeating. Now it is looking like a little bit stuffed, so I would actually, I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but I would actually reduce the number of these to maybe just like 1 per hook. So 1 yellow, 1 purple, 1 blue, and then of course the colors will repeat. So you kind of have them duplicated on the other side, and that's okay. That part is okay, but I wouldn't do 2 on each hook because it looks kind of crowded. It looks a little bit, I don't want to say messy, but it looks a little bit crowded on there. So this could be a thing where it's like you just monitor it and fill it as you go. So maybe you have like your tote with those particular designs handy and readily available and accessible, and you just kind of keep that rack looking nice and clean. Kind of like what you have like going on like over here, where yes, there are repeating designs where you have, okay, strawberry, 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 and then coffee, coffee, coffee. But each hook isn't really overloaded. You know what I mean? And here it looks kind of stuffed, but here it's nice and breathable. You know, it's not overstuffed and looking super crowded. There's a couple duplicates on the same hook and everything, but the point is that it looks breathable and clean. So that's kind of what you would want to repeat over here, okay? But like I said, you know, as you go throughout the day and people start to purchase these, then, you know, have that tote handy and then set a new one out, you know, and just kind of keep it like one at a time and looking really clean. So we've kind of covered both of these in one point now, but just to kind of summarize this one, I really, really like this display because it's very simple. It keeps all of the focus on the earrings, and it doesn't have a backing board, but because your earring cards are large compared to the size of the earrings themselves, I don't really think you need any kind of a backing on the display itself because the earring cards are providing nice contrast with the items. Okay, so the items are standing out no problem, and I don't think any kind of a backing is necessary on the display unit itself. So then finally for this table, we have the sticker container, and the sticker container is kind of like a pick through situation. So the stickers are very, very reasonably priced, for $1, right? So for that type of a situation, I think the pick through situation is okay. So I don't really mind that. And I don't think that for something this reasonably priced that it makes too much sense to, you know, really dedicate like some kind of vertical display for it or anything like that. So I think what you're doing here is okay for this particular situation. All right, so now this is the right side of the booth. To kind of put it into perspective, let me show you like where we're at in the grand scheme of things. So now we're looking at this table right here on the right side as you'd be walking into the booth. And this particular table is definitely the best part of the booth. I mean, hands down, it's not even close. You've got some tabletop items, which generally, you know, I try to steer people away from, but only in the circumstance when it's the only thing on the table. For example, like we talked about the other table on the left side of the booth, everything is just laid down on the table, and that is kind of a no-no. But when you lay stuff down on the table like this and you have several things behind it, and especially going up in vertical, then that's when this actually turns into an area of strength instead of an area where there's a need for improvement, okay? But let's start on the left side here. We've got 3 wooden crates. I really like the way that they're stacked. So they're all laid down horizontally, and that provides, first of all, stability as opposed to having them stood up and maybe somebody bumps into the table, and the ones that are stood up, they're a little bit less stable than the ones that are flat and laid down on their side, okay? So the way that you've got them stacked is really nice. The way that you have all your designs featured in here is fantastic. Okay, and then not only do you have a lot of items featured within the crates, but look around the crates. I mean, on all sides, on top, you have large items that are featured on that. So it just creates a really, really nice space here. Okay, and then this guy in the center, he is probably your largest item that I've seen at your booth. So I like the decision here to put him in between the 2 displays because it kind of just carries on that sense of verticality at this table. So I would say good job with that. And then finally, this wire rack here is great because there's a lot of mid-size items in this one. And again, we have a lot of items that have duplicates paired together. So really, again, there's a lot of just good decisions at this table. This table in particular, it just feels like it would be coming from that of a veteran vendor. So I like it a lot. Nicely done. Okay, and the last couple of things on the table are some tabletop grouped displays. So you have the Pop-Tarts in the middle here, and it's nice because you can see through the wiring and see, you know, the whole design. And then over here you have bows, and those are in the clear container. And then finally over here, it looks like these are these the fidget buddies inside of this one here? You've got this pail, okay? And this is kind of a side note, but I like your color choice on it because the blue is going to be tied into the theme of the booth. So when you look at the booth as a whole from the outside, the blue doesn't really jump out at you first, but I think there's going to start to be a theme with the color as well introduced. I kind of feel like that's the direction it's going towards. So with this particular display, I like the color of it. Then finally over here, there is a display that kind of acts as like a sister of this display, where it's out front and it's kind of like the eye catcher. And it looks really nice. It looks like it's really nice quality. I like the design of it, how it's open like this, but yet it looks really sturdy. And then the nice neutral color of the display is good too, because you got some nice wild colors on here, like the really bright blues, the pinks and purples and all that, and they do really well against just that wooden color. So I like this display quite a bit as well. So your two displays out here, and then this table setup over here, I would say are the strengths of your display situation. Also not bad over here. Okay, so you have a couple of good ones over here. So really, I think a lot of it is covered, and now you can come on over to here, to this table, and then to your mystery bags. And that is going to be the focus on getting some elevation over here. I would just go ahead and literally get 3 more of these crates, to be honest with you, and carry that on over to this table and just repeat it, because it looks really, really good. And there's nothing wrong with mirroring it and repeating it on this side. Okay, so I would definitely recommend that again. And I know that these items aren't big, so you were using the bigger items to kind of put on and around the wooden crates. But again, if you had a few crates over here, there's nothing saying that you like have to have big crocheted items around it. Maybe that would be a good spot for the mystery bags, so you have like a couple of tiers where, okay, there's like the entry level tier on the lower part, but then on the high part, it's kind of like, oh, it's the big mystery bags. It's the good ones, and those are the high ones. So just something to consider. I think that, might help out this side of the booth feel like it's punching at the same weight as this side. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into pricing. So there's a little bit of a combination of pricing methods happening at the booth, and nothing wrong with that, but just pointing it out. So in most areas, there's grouped pricing, where there's a sign that covers a specific zone or type of product, okay? So just for example, right out front, we see the Octos are $15, and that covers these, right? As we make our way around, we're also going to see some individually priced items. So this is a really good example over here. So I'll zoom in a little bit, and we can see individual tags on items on this side, okay? So again, nothing wrong with any of it. And as long as you're making it clear for the shoppers what everything costs, that's exactly what you want to do. And that's the only thing that you want to be doing with your pricing. So I think you're doing a good job with it. I like the pricing signs. I like the fact that they're just kind of basic and they aren't stealing the spotlight away from your items. And I like that they're a black chalkboard because, again, your items are a really wide variety of colors. And it's nice just to have the straight black because they actually stand out well against all the various wild colors around these signs, okay? So some people want to kind of spruce up their signage or have it be like a certain color that kind of pops. But at some point, if you did that, I mean, you could pick any color and odds are you have crochet crafts that match that color, and you really don't want to do that. You want to kind of stay away from that actually because they would kind of blend into one another. So the black is really good just to be basic and neutral. And then another thing that I noticed on the signs that could be an improvement is that you have blue chalk in some places and then white in others. And I think I've seen a couple other colors in some other places, but at some point you want to settle on one color and like one style. Okay. So maybe you have the numbers, like the actual price, be one color, and then the item description be a second color. But whatever you do, just repeat it on every sign. So you don't want to basically have one color on one sign, one color on another, and then keep bouncing around. Obviously, I think you're leaning into a blue theme with your booth just based on your banner. And most of the signs are blue. So I would just go ahead and stick with the blue on the black all the way across the entire booth. Now, when it comes to the shade of blue that you're using, I actually kind of like it because if you take a look, let's zoom in here. This blue right here actually matches the tone of the blue on your banner pretty well. It's a pretty darn close match. So again, I would just roll that out all the way through because that is just going to help to, first of all, make your pricing signs consistent from start to finish. And then also it's just going to help with the strength of the theme in establishing that all over the booth. Okay. I mean, that color is just going to start to like hammer home in people's minds. So it's kind of like a win-win situation with going with that blue. You're helping your theme, and then you're also making your price signage more consistent. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into signage in general at the booth. Now, while we were talking about pricing, I did take a look and I did not see any kind of a sign that lets shoppers know what your payment methods are. So that would probably be a pretty easy sign that you can roll out to just be informative for the shoppers. So that would be a good sign to have. Generally, that particular sign, if you don't have a dedicated checkout area at your booth, like some people will actually have like a little table set up for their checkout area. If you don't have that, then the spot that you want to put this particular sign, your accepted payment method sign, is going to be where you'll be standing the most as a vendor. Okay, so you always want it to be like where you'll be as the vendor, because if somebody comes in your booth and they like an item and they pick it up and they decide that they're going to pay for it, they're going to come find you. They're going to come to where you are. And so if you're standing by that sign, great. It'll be nice for them to look down and be like, oh, okay, I can pay with my card, or okay, it's only cash. Like that'll be nice for the shopper to have that, to have it be where you are. Okay. So that's always just kind of like a general rule of thumb for your accepted payment method sign. If you don't have the dedicated payment checkout area, then you want it to be where you are going to be as the vendor. Okay. And then I also want to mention during the review that Ashton did email me and let me know that she does take custom orders through Etsy. So this is something that you definitely want to advertise at your in-person events as well, because even if you don't necessarily take the custom orders in person, like say, for example, they have to go through Etsy in order to make it happen, I would still at least put a sign out for that. And then that way you can have a sign kind of covering both those elements, the fact that you take custom orders, and then also a sign that helps to boost your Etsy presence. Okay, so maybe you got like a QR code that'll take people to your Etsy, something like that. But if you do take custom orders at your craft fair booth, I would recommend having forms on hand for that. And I have a form available. I'll kind of post it on the screen here for a second while I'm talking about it. It's a custom order form. It covers all the basic things that you want to have agreed upon with a buyer in that situation. So, feel free to check it out. It's on my Etsy page. I think it's like $1.19 or something like that, but it's printable, downloadable, whatever you want to do. And anybody that does customization at their booth should definitely check it out, because it's good to have all these things hashed out so that there's absolutely no discrepancies. Whenever you do like custom orders, you want to have it like very, very clear and specific what is expected of you and also from the buyer. So you want to have things like, how is the item going to be shipped or delivered? Is there tax? Is there a shipping fee? What is the time frame where, how long this is going to take to get done? All that kind of stuff, you want to have that figured out so that there's no loose ends that need to get tied up later and there's no misunderstandings and communication breakdowns. But anyways, kind of circling back, again, a customization sign would be fantastic. And then something also for your Etsy would be good. And I think this could be done on one sign. So since we're talking about your Etsy page, let's actually go ahead and just move on to marketing. So marketing at the booth, I think it's on its way. Okay. So you have a nice banner. I really like the banner because it has a cool logo. I like the moon, and the two crescent moons represent the O and the word moon. Really nice. Then it has a couple of your ways to reach out to you. So you got Instagram covered, and then you've got Etsy covered. So that's fantastic. And then we come down here on the table, and you have like a tabletop display that's doing the same thing as your banner. Okay, so this one, maybe what you could do is substitute in the custom order form, and like I do custom orders on through Etsy or however you want to do it. Maybe that could be a substitute for this one, because this again is just repeating what you have already covered up here. Okay. I do like the business cards that are out front and center. With business cards, you want to have them in at least 2 locations at your booth. The reason why is that if there's a couple of shoppers standing right here, if somebody was in a different part of your booth, so say they were standing over here or they were standing over here, they wouldn't have access to those business cards. Okay, so I would recommend, if you have a U-shaped setup like this with 3 tables, maybe just put one on all 3 tables. There's no harm in that. So that just makes it easily available for everybody at the booth. But yeah, as far as other ways that you can enhance your marketing, one way that you can do it is your earring cards. So I noticed that they're all black. Obviously, I can't see the back side of them, so you very well might have your logo on them somewhere. But on your earring cards, you should definitely have your business logo. And then I would also put this information on this as well. So your Instagram and then your Etsy link on the back. You can do this a couple of different ways. It can actually be printed onto earring cards, or you can get stickers made and then just put a sticker on the back of the earring card. So either way you do it, that is one way for you to enhance marketing at the booth. Now, another way that you can do it is on your items that were individually tagged. So we saw some individual pricing tags on this side of the booth. You can see some here, here, here. Okay. So on one side of these price tags, you can have the price itself. And then on the back side, again, you can maybe just put, your business logo, because the pricing tags aren't that big, so it gets a little bit tight when you try to squeeze too much in. But again, just tossing ideas your way for things that you can do in the future to really take the marketing to the next level. The tags themselves, as you kind of grow and get more and more invested into your in-person business, maybe the tags themselves can improve a little bit, where go ahead and make them or order them in this blue color, like this bluish gray color. And that way, okay, now we've just taken that another level as well. So these are just these little things that it's going to add up over time. And, it's not something that you should try to worry about doing like all at one time, but little by little, these are the things that you can kind of do to really start to tie in a theme throughout the entire booth in all aspects. Okay, so now let's talk about vertical space, and we did touch on this quite a bit during the display segment, so I'll keep this part short. But like I said, the left side of the booth is really where you want to be basically replicating what you did on this side, okay, because this side is just wonderful, really, really fantastic. This display over here, this particular one, I might angle it outwards just a touch, okay, to again draw people from the aisle. So the people that are walking by at the craft fair, have it angled slightly more outwards so that you can have yet more designs in their view to help pull them in. Okay. That's really the only suggestion maybe I would say for this side, is just a touch. You don't have to go too crazy, but And then on this side, this is where you definitely want to level up, so we talked about the different levels, possibly the wooden crates for the mystery bags. And then we did talk about a couple of the items on the back end of this table in particular. So there was the octopus in the back, and let me just see here. Okay, so we talked about these guys getting up on a riser and then these coming up higher too. And I think if you brought them to maybe about this height, that you'd be in good shape over here, especially with the bags being higher as well. So yeah, that's about it. Otherwise, verticality, you're actually doing pretty well with your booth. I would consider it an area of strength of the booth, especially considering these stands being out here and using your lower vertical space at the booth. Okay, so really, really good job with that. Again, I want to give you some good kudos on this part of the booth. Okay, let's dive into colors, contrast, and texture. So colors, we're again leaning into the pale blue gray type of color, and I really like it. I think it's a really, really attractive color, especially paired up with black. I think the two just look really, really nice together. So speaking of black, that kind of brings me to the tablecloth situation. On the right and left of the booth, you have the stretch black tablecloths, which are fantastic. They're just really nice and clean, no distractions, great contrast against the items, so the items stand out really well against it. Everything looks really good. Then we got this tablecloth in the middle, and if you've followed the channel for a long time, you know what I'm about to say. So it's a texture issue, okay? So patterns and like intense repeating patterns on tablecloths is a distraction to the eye. Okay, so especially look at this view where we're at right now. When we have like this pulled back view from a distance, the eye is drawn to, in my opinion, I think it's drawn to the banner, which is not a terrible thing, okay, because it's advertising your business and it has good information. But then the eye is also drawn into this, and specifically this area, not what is displayed above it, okay? And that is where the issue comes in. So repeating patterns, the eye just naturally gets drawn into those, okay? It's kind of like a vortex. It just sucks the eyes in. And whatever is being displayed on this table is kind of lost or secondary to the pattern, okay? So I understand that it's nice because it has like the crescent moon shape on it, and yeah, it kind of technically goes in with the theme, but I think that you'd be so much better off with just going ahead and getting a third black stretch tablecloth. You've already got the two, so that is already kind of where you're headed, but I think that this would just calm everything down in this area of the booth and bring the attention back to what is actually on top of the table. See, like when you look at this setup right here, the eyes aren't drawn into this black area. They're drawn to all the action that's happening up here. But here it's almost like flip-flopped, where we have the black earring cards, and then we have the black signage, and then here is where the action is, and we don't want that. We want the focus to always be on the items, okay? So that, I think, is a really, really simple fix at the booth, and I think it's going to help you out tremendously. And as far as other sections of the booth, your colors, your contrast, and your texture, I think is all in really, really good shape. It's just this one element that I think is harming you probably quite a bit, okay? At least from the shopper's perspective. So just something to think about, and, consider changing at the booth, but, just a thought, okay? All right, now let's go ahead and dive into strength of theme, which I think is very, very strong at the booth. One thing on the marketing sign that would be nice, like if you were to make another sign in the future down the road or whatever, don't get me wrong, this one is fine, okay? There's nothing wrong with it. But if you wanted to, take a next step in the future when you get a different sign or whatever, is to have something that says crocheted works, or like something with like crochet or even textile crafts or something. because it's always nice to have on the sign what you make, predominantly what you sell and all that. But like I said, this is by no means a mandatory thing. This is just what a lot of vendors will do is they'll have their business name and then their contact info, how to get a hold of them. And then typically the third element will be like what they make. Okay, so what kind of like genre of arts and crafts they fall into. So again, just something to kind of consider. Definitely not necessary at this point. So don't worry about, oh God, I got to get that, swapped out immediately. But, obviously the large portion of the booth is crochet, and that's good. I do like the decision on this table to keep it predominantly your other types of crafts. Okay, so I like that the other types of crafts aren't mixed into the other tables. So I think this was a good decision on your part to keep the earrings over here, to keep the stickers over here, and even the keychains are, yes, they're crochet, but they're not just like standalone crochet pieces that like aren't another type of item. Okay, so I like that you have this table set aside for the other types of crafts that you do. But yeah, strength of theme, again, I don't really have a whole lot to chip in here. I think that you're doing good with starting to introduce the colors. So we talked about the colors earlier where you can tie that into your pricing. You can tie that into your earring cards. You can tie it into even the pricing signs by having the blue everywhere instead of kind of mixing in the blue and the white and whatnot. So these are those little things that you can kind of sprinkle in that are going to help to tie in the theme on top of what you're already doing with your items being part of the theme. Okay, so it's a combination. It's always going to be a combination of, how do I get my theme looking unified? It's always going to be like, okay, what am I doing with my items? And then what am I doing with my displays, my signage, my materials, that type of stuff. So as long as you just keep those two elements in mind and make sure that you're, keeping all that on the same page, you're going to be in good shape. Now, one more thing I'd like to point out with strength of theme is that I was trying to think of something where it could really tie in the crescent moon part of the theme. And I started looking around online for, things that you could do. And on Amazon, I stumbled upon this light set, and it's actually a string of lights that are crescent moons. So they're battery operated, and that's nice where, if you're at an outdoor event, you don't have to worry about paying extra for electric, or a lot of outdoor events don't even offer electric. So there's that issue too. But with a battery operated light set, it's kind of nice because it's, so low maintenance and you're not tied to those other factors that we talked about earlier. So just something to consider. And if you do dig it and you like it, there's a link below in the description. Otherwise, if it just kind of gets like your wheels turning and you don't like that particular string set, but it sparks another idea, yeah, go with it. Again, like a lot of this is just kind of brainstorming, and just hearing it from a different perspective is nice because as a vendor, it's not that we stop trying to like innovate our booth and refine it and all that stuff, but when it's just one vendor and one person, you only have yourself as your perspective, so just hearing different ideas and all that stuff is good, because it just kind of gets the wheels turning sometimes. So yeah, again, if you like that, maybe that could be something cool to add to the booth, or, maybe you could have it like strung from the top and it would just be, kind of glowing like that. That might be something to draw people in where it's a little bit different, it's something that somebody else isn't doing, and that might be enough to get somebody's attention. Just explore some thoughts. And if you want to take your theme to a greater level like that, well then, okay, cool. That's like some things that you can do. Or maybe you want to keep it more subdued and basic and leave the focus on the items. Neither path is wrong. Okay. So keep that in mind as well, that you don't have to push your theme to the absolute max because it can be overdone. And I've seen it happen where people put so much focus and attention on the theme that, okay, now you've kind of gone overboard and the items are getting lost. So there's a balance to it. Just keep all these things in mind and do what's going to be best for you. All right, now let's talk about accessibility. When I mention accessibility, I'm kind of talking about a few different things. The general tidiness of the booth, how close people want to get to the booth, and also things like tripping hazards, like physical accessibility, features at the booth, anything that could be like a dangerous situation and whatnot. So With that being said, I think that accessibility is pretty good at the booth. Actually, it's very well done. I like this particular setup. There's two craft fair setups that I really like for a 10 by 10 booth. I like the U-shaped setup, and it can be a walk-in U shape, or it can be a walk around where, say for example, this table was pulled all the way up here to the front. And if you had the shoppers kind of walk around the outside and you had everything facing outwards and you, the vendor, were standing in the middle. Okay, so those are like the two different U shapes. You can have it like inverted or, external where the people are walking around. Either way is cool. I think either way buys a lot of table space. And then the other type of layout that is becoming more and more common, like seemingly by the day, is the Z pattern. And that is where you utilize 3 tables that are smaller tables. Okay, so not 8 footers, but likely 4 or 6 footers. And you have one going along the back wall on the left corner. So you'd have it like here. Then you'd have another table coming right down the middle, like here. And then you have finally one last table here on the front right. So you'd have back left, then coming right down the middle, and then front right. And that is the Z pattern. The vendor would stand back here, so they'd be back in this space, and then that would give the shoppers this whole area to look around. So I like the U and I like the Z. Those are my 2 favorite setups because with both of them, you're able to utilize 3 tables and you have plenty of space as the vendor to be present, but then also you're giving a lot of space to the shoppers. So it's really a win-win for all situations. Okay, then as far as tripping hazards and things like that, I don't see anything that could be an issue. This tablecloth, it's barely touching the ground. Okay, so really not that big of an issue there. And then over here, you have the stretch tablecloths. These, I don't see them being a tripping hazard. They're nice looking displays. They look sturdy, like they're not going to fall over. Same thing with everything that's on the table over here. Everything looks put together well, in good condition. Okay, so it's not like some ancient thing that's fallen apart. Your wood crates, they look basically brand new, and they're stacked very nicely, and everything looks sturdy. So yeah, again, I think the table and everything looks fantastic with accessibility. People are able to get in and check things out. You've got your items faced outwards oftentimes. So these are all faced outwards towards the people walking by. Same thing here. These are kind of angled outwards, and even these are faced, diagonal outwards towards where the crowd is going to be walking by. And that is a good point of accessibility as well, because that's another element of accessibility that we talk about is how well are you drawing people into the booth? So, are you showcasing your items in a way that's making your booth accessible and a magnet for shoppers? And I think you're doing that really, really well. So this, I'd say, you're ahead of the pack, especially for being at your 3rd event. I don't think a lot of vendors are at this point where they're able to draw people in by showcasing items in an outward fashion. So very, very good job there. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to general use of space. And kind of like I just touched on with your layout, I think you're doing a really good job of maximizing your space because you have a lot of items out there. When you really start to look at this booth, there is quite a bit on display and a lot of different types of items. So, even just this first display right here has 5 different types of items. So that's fantastic. And then once you start getting to the tables, there's quite a bit going on here. So I've seen a lot of crochet crafters that have a lot less at their booth, and these pieces take time to put together. The crochet work, it's not this really quick thing. All these pieces take time, so this is a lot of work that went into this booth, and good job. Again, hats off to you. This is definitely a strength of the booth, is general use of space. So, again, kudos to you. Okay, now let's start talking about the eye test. And the eye test is basically the 2 or 3 seconds that somebody is walking by your booth, and what are you doing as a vendor to get them to stop and check out all the items at your booth. The eye test, I would say, is a little bit above average. It's pretty good. These are definitely helping you quite a bit. Now, you do have to be careful with your booth boundaries. Okay, so let me show you here just as an example really quick. You're a little bit outside of the booth boundary. So they have the spray paint right here where the booth should kind of end, and you're a little bit out into the aisle. Now, I know that, yes, it's only, seriously, probably what, 6, 8, 10 inches? Not a whole lot. Most organizers will be okay with like something like this where it's just a little bit out there, but some venues, especially when you start to get into indoor shows, if you start doing indoor shows, like the layouts that the organizers put down are really, really precise sometimes because they only have a certain amount of space inside. So they're trying to maximize the number of booths at the show while still making the aisles a comfortable width for the shoppers. Okay, so just kind of play it by show to show, but I would recommend trying your best to keep it within the booth boundary. Okay. And like I said, every organizer, every situation is going to be different, but as a vendor, this is something that you should, just try to do every single time. Okay. But yeah, like I said, getting back to the eye test, this is a really nice booth, and there's a lot of really nice quality items that are well done, well featured, well displayed, and I think it's inviting. I think it's a nice, inviting booth. Now, what I would recommend to you that I haven't talked about yet is to put a back panel on your canopy. So this is another one of these eye tricks that it's going to help to get people to focus on what is being displayed. Whenever you can simplify backgrounds, definitely try to do it, okay? And for tent canopies, they make these attachments where you can like roll it up, or roll it down and as needed. And do a solid color. So some of these tent canopies, they make them where they look kind of fancy and they have like these little fake windows and stuff like that. That kind of defeats the purpose. All right. What you want is a nice solid color. So if you do just straight white, cool. If you do just straight black, that might be even better because you kind of have blue and black as your colors. So provide a nice solid backdrop, because when people are looking at your booth from this angle, you kind of see the items, but then you see the sidewalk all around it and you see these steps and, the door back here. And then if there were items up here, the brickwork would be really disruptive because that's like such a repeating pattern. And that's kind of like what we talked about with the table. Okay. Is you want to really avoid repeating patterns as much as possible. So yeah, this is one of those things I would highly recommend getting at least a backdrop. Some people do all three sides, so the two sides and the backdrop. Now, if you want to just stick to the backdrop, cool. That's the one that I would put priority on, okay? Now, with the colors, like I said, black is part of your theme, but keep in mind that white, when the sun hits it, it provides a really nice glow inside the booth. And you can talk to other vendors about this. They'll definitely agree where a white canopy with, white sidewalls or white back wall, there's just something about it where when the sun hits it, it's almost like a light diffuser, like a natural light diffuser. And it provides like a really, really nice, warm glow light on the inside. And that can really make your items look beautiful under that kind of light. So just something to consider. I know that we talked about, black with the theme, but if you went with white, it definitely wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. Okay. Now there's one last thing that I want to point out that's kind of random, like the eye test. Like I never know where in the heck I'm going with the eye test. I'm always talking about random stuff, but there's one thing I noticed at the booth that we haven't seen before in the booth reviews, and I'm going to mention it. Okay. So right here is a book, and we don't want to see that. So, there should be no sitting and reading a book at any point during a craft fair. Okay. I'm talking during a show. I'm talking maybe in the morning, you kind of got set up quicker than you thought that you would. You should never be sitting and reading, okay? Because in the morning, okay, let's just kind of lay it out like for times of the show, okay? So I can kind of like tell you why. So in the morning, if you get set up quicker than you thought, and you got some like bonus time basically before the event officially opens to the public, you want to basically be like standing and attentive and ready, because this chunk of time before the show opens to the public, but after vendors have gotten set up, that is when other vendors run around all over the place and shop from one another. Vendors will do this twice at shows, but generally they do it in the morning because they know that they have like literally first pickings at every booth that they want at a craft fair. So it's like prime shopping time for other vendors. So you always want to try to get ready and your booth set up as early as you possibly can. Okay. So even if you know that your booth only takes an hour to set up, but you have 2.5 hours, come right away. Get there as early as you can, get set up, and then just be ready, because I guarantee you that other vendors are going to come and shop from you. And this is so nice because you can really start to build up your profits and at least work towards paying off your booth fee before the event even opens up to the public. Okay, so this is like a fantastic thing to take advantage of. So that is one time of day that you don't want to be, kind of sitting with your head down in a book and all that stuff. Now, during the show, that is absolutely something that you should not be doing. Okay, so if at all possible, stand. Okay, so I understand that, all people are not physically able to do this, so obviously I'm not including that in this, but if you're able to, I highly recommend that you stand during the show, because there's just something about it. Like, shoppers will tell you that they just feel more comfortable and they feel like more connected to a vendor that's standing, because they'll walk in, obviously they're standing, and when you're kind of like at their level, it just like there's a connection there. And when you're sitting down and the shopper has to like look down at you, or maybe you're kind of like in some ways hidden behind a display, like you have kind of a taller display over here, and maybe depending on where people are standing, you're kind of behind it or whatever. There's no connection there, you know what I mean? And it hurts that chance to connect with the shopper, and it limits the sales opportunities, so we kind of talked about why you don't want to do it before a show, why you don't want to do it during a show. And then after a show, I mean, you're probably not going to be reading after a show anyways, you know what I mean? Because you're, at that point, you're kind of taking down your booth. But this is also another little slice of time where you'll probably have vendors come up to you every now and then, even after a show, and be like, hey, do you still have this, or did you sell it? Like, because a lot of vendors, when they take like their restroom break, or maybe they take like their lunch break, they'll kind of do like a lap around the show sometimes and check out like other vendors, especially, once the show is going and everybody's set up and they can check out all the booths that are already prepared and set up. After the show, this is when there's another little like mini rush of vendors shopping from other vendors. So you don't want to miss out on that either. Okay. So like I said, I mean, odds are you're, obviously not reading at that point, but just on a side note, aside from the reading thing, just kind of be ready for that, be ready for other vendors to come up to you, and try to keep in mind like the stuff that you sold, maybe like the cool items that you might still have available and all that. So you might be able to get some last minute sales there. And that's always nice. It's like icing on the cake at the end of the day. So just keep these things in mind. And then finally, Ashton, the one thing I do want to mention too is the totes. Now, they are mostly out of sight, but try to get as many as you can underneath the table. And it is harder with the stretch tablecloths. So let me go to the main view again. And with the stretch tablecloths, they're kind of contoured like this on all sides. So it's not easy at all to get a tote underneath them, especially if you have to access the tote at any point. Then it becomes basically impossible, okay? Because, you got to like lift one leg up and fold the tablecloth up and stuff like that. Whereas a loose tablecloth, they're a lot more easy to access anything that might be underneath it. Okay. So maybe if you switch this one out, maybe just do like a traditional tablecloth, that's loose and not contoured. And then that way, if you need to access anything that's under it, you at least have one table that's like, you can just flip up and grab whatever's underneath it super quick, But yeah, that's about it. That's really about all that I have for you. I know that there was a lot of, I don't want to say like criticism style tips in this video. I don't want it to come off that I wasn't balanced and complimentary of things that you're doing well. I hope I I hope I laid out, you know, some things that you're doing well. I mean, like I said, verticality is really good. Your general use of space, your booth layout is really good. The fact that your pricing is super clear and all that. The start of your theme is really good. These two displays on the end is being great. The sheer number of items and the variety that you have is really good. So like I said, you're doing like a lot of stuff that's really great. Okay. But I wanted to throw as many tips as I possibly could at you because of the fact that you're, you know, newer to craft fairs, and the more tips you got, I hope the better, you know. Like I said, don't get overwhelmed by the number of them. Just, you know, do what you can little by little. And before you know it, I mean, you're going to be blown away by how far you've come, you know. And like I said, you've already got a great start. So don't get discouraged. This was episode number 20 in the Craft Fair Booth Reviews series. Please check out all of, or I should say both. I think she's got 2 links. Okay, so I'll post her Instagram and her Etsy. Give her a follow. All right, go check out her stuff. Go on Etsy and favorite her shop. That's something that's very easy to do. And maybe if you have somebody whose birthday is coming up, or maybe you're watching this video when the holidays are coming up, keep these stores in mind. Okay. Keep these Etsy shops in mind, because it's always great to buy something that first of all is handmade, and to know that you're supporting like an independent artist. Okay. So like I said, go check out the Etsy shop, favorite the Etsy shop, follow on Instagram, and all that good stuff. So if you want to get your craft fair booth reviewed, I have this available for channel members, and the memberships are great. There's a lot of fantastic perks and bonus perks for channel members. So I have that available on YouTube. If you hit the join button underneath this video, it'll show you all of the perks and tiers that are available for channel members. So be sure to check that out. Also check out my website, howtocraftfair.com, where I have my Amazon links that will help you with items that'll be great for your next craft fair, as well as my Etsy shop, where I have downloadable resources. Like I mentioned before with the custom order form, I have a whole bunch of different forms that can help you with a craft fair. So to check out all the other booth reviews, click on this playlist above, and thank you all again so much for watching.